Hey guys, Stu Darling from Unstoppable Force. Welcome to the podcast. Do you know what? I believe we can all break out of mediocrity. We can all reach beyond what we thought our limits were. And that's what we talk about on the podcast. We talk about being unreasonable. We talk about raising our standards. And we talk about delivering the ultimate sacrifice again and again. Enjoy. In this episode, I talk to Libby Robertson. Now, Libby has been a dear friend and coach of mine for years. In this episode, we not only touch upon the importance of being entrepreneurs and growing an unreasonable behavior, but we also talk about the challenges of addiction and the importance of taking time to understand our relationships. All right then. Okay. Well, welcome to this episode of Unstoppable Force. Really excited today that I have got a really dear friend, Libby Robertson, on this episode. Libby, welcome to the TV show, to the podcast. Tell me about the view out the back. Looks amazing. Where are you?
It's fantastic. I am in the Mount in the north of New Zealand, in Tauranga, Bay of Plenty. And that friend just moved into this place and she's traveling. She goes, "Hey, do you want to come stay in my house for a while I'm away?" I'm like, "Yes, sign me up."
Fantastic, because you guys have been through massive shifts since we last spoke. You've created a new business. You're now the director of Paradigm. So you've moved on from this galactic businesswoman that you once were, or are you still? Tell me about Paradigm and tell me about the brand.
Yeah, beautiful. So I think you've gone through this shift as well, Stu. You get to a point in business when you're of service and you're constantly asking these questions. How can I be of more service? How can I impact more? How can I expand the vision? And what kept coming through so strongly was it's so much bigger than Libby Robertson. And it got to the point where it was feeling really strange of introducing myself and having the team introduce themselves as, "Hi, we're from Libby Robertson Global." And I actually saw the vision for what we've now created a couple of years ago when we were living in Bali. And I thought, right, I'll know the time that this is meant to come through. And it's about creating a new paradigm. That's where the brand name has come from. And first of all, it came when I saw the vision, when I had this idea, it very much came through as a consulting company and changing the way that we do business, changing the way that we lead, changing the way that we live our lives. And the creation of Paradigm has two facets to it. So there's the entrepreneurial side, which I'm still very galactic in my approach to everything, I think, very cosmic, but I also have a very grounded approach. And in order to reach more people, in order to have a conversation with a wider audience, we have to speak to those that we're here to serve in a language that everyone understands. And so the entrepreneurial side is speaking to those who have perhaps gone down a very traditional route in their lives, and they realize that there's more to life than paying the bills, just getting by, and they're stepping out and turning their purpose work into a business of their own. So that's side one. And then the other side is in corporate wellness or workplace wellness. So the vision that we have for this is effectively a happier world. And the way that we do that is through working with corporates, working with workplaces to implement really simple, effective changes in their staff and in their team to be able to really activate their potential and show up in the workplace happy and fulfilled. And it's about working with the management team and the employees to find a balance where everyone is in their purpose, where everyone is feeling productive, and most importantly, where everyone's happy. Like, isn't that what life's about?
Boom, totally. I was on a call this morning with a friend of mine in Indianapolis, and this was exactly the conversation we were having. She used the word fortitude. How do we bring fortitude into our businesses? And I was saying, well, you can talk about fortitude, but unless people are happy where they are, unless people are feeling fulfilled, then every business is going to struggle with that. And you can't just jump in and say, my business has fortitude, unless we create that individual relationship with everyone through the business that allows us to us all to have fortitude, and there we rise.
Exactly. And I think there's a shift as well. Like, companies used to be able to get away with having this very top-down approach to how they're leading and how they're operating. And now I think that at a mass level, most of the world, most conversations that we're having, people are realizing that they don't have to stick around in a job for decades now. If they're not being looked after by their company, or if they're feeling undervalued or like they're in a toxic environment, they just get up and leave. Like, the choices that we have are massive. And so I think we get to take a new approach, and exactly that.
I think, it's there was a book written a long time, I think it was 2006, it was written, called The Spider and the Starfish. And it was about businesses that have that real solid structure of top-down approach and how they are going to fail. And then that's the spider, and then the starfish is the organizations that the leg can fall off the starfish, and the starfish grows another one back, and it works. And Google and Oracle are great examples of those businesses. But without some sort of structure inside it, it can fall to bits. But unless you have that flatter holacracy, you're not going to hold on to people, and you will lose the good people, and you deserve to lose the good people, and they will go and find the right places to work.
Yeah, exactly. We've just because have you implemented some really cool things with your team lately as well, Stu? I know you guys have been up to some.
Well, we brought the second team member on. Liz is now in the business, and we've reached out, and we've got guys working on PR, we've got guys working marketing, we've got the guys supporting this podcast, and just beginning to grow it out and understand, because there is an element of, when there's just you live to your values, or you at least attempt to. But then you go and look for other organizations, and what we've found is, on a number of occasions, you start working with people and you think, yup, and then something happens and you go, oops, nope. And you just got to work through that process and work through it and go, right, can they learn or not quite? And if not quite, that's fine. That's okay. But with one of the values of Unstoppable Force being, we always raise our standards. Well, I've got to live to that every day. And if the people that I'm working with choose to stay where they are, cool. There's obviously a market for them, but maybe not for us, because as you've got to continually raise your values, raise your standards, in order to stay true to yourself. Because if not, you would still be, you'd still be Libby Wallace.
Yeah.
And I use that name specifically.
Yeah, literally. And I think there's a permission that we get to give ourselves as leaders as well to constantly evolve. And you think of creating a brand as very different, like a brand that's not just about you anymore is so different than just a personal brand, because you've got yourself to consider, you've got the team to consider, you've got the vision to consider, and still give yourself permission to constantly evolve, and building that into the values like you're just talking about of the company is super important, so that there is that room for growth, so that when you say to the team, or when you say to your clients, hey, there's some changes, right? There's some changes happening. Mm-hmm. Everyone's expecting that, and also everyone's excited because they know that the changes are a good thing.
Yeah. Did you grieve a little bit when Libby Robertson suddenly went, we're done now, it's now Paradigm? Did you grieve for LibbyRobertson.com a little bit?
That is so funny that you asked that. We had our Christmas party, which was also our launch party for our soft launch for Paradigm. And I was sitting on the couch the afternoon of the party thinking I was going to be really excited. And I sit there and I start crying. And Dane, my husband, who I founded the company with, he's like, what's wrong? And I said, I had no idea that stepping into this next level and creating this next iteration of the company and of the vision means that it's not just me anymore. And I spent so much of my time wondering when I was going to be there, wondering when the company as Libby Robertson was going to be where I could see that it was going to be. And I realized, and I think I was grieving not so much for the change. I was excited by the change, but I also realized that I wished that I hadn't spent so much time wondering when I was going to be there, because now I'm never going to get that time back.
I think, I mean, I remember the moment that stewdarling.com became a thing. You know, we were, Liz and I were sitting in an auditorium of probably a couple of thousand people. And the presenter on stage, Brendan Bouchard, said, look, you need a framework. If you've got a framework that people understand, your business will fly. And that was the birth of Lead Through Life. That was where the book came from. That was where stewdarling.com came from. And I can feel it now in the back of my neck that was the moment. And then there was, because that was going to be the thing, and then there was that realization of, actually, do you know what, Stu? You cannot serve your people, your tribe. You cannot serve New Zealand and the world as stewdarling.com anymore. It's got to be something beyond that. And that was, you know, that was where the birth of Unstoppable Force came from. And all of a sudden, much as there was a little, yeah, there was the grieving process, there was the realization of, wow, Unstoppable Force is just next level. And that's what we've seen right across, you know, the last 4 months. It's, you know, it really has grown. So I think, you know, as with every, and we're going to come to this in a minute, as with every, you know, every time the door closes or the window closes, the next one opens up and you realize, wow, it's now time and I am ready.
Yeah. How did you and Liz navigate that grieving process being in business together?
Extreme violence. I think it's really fascinating. Yeah, I mean, Lizzie and I have been through you know, a lot, and you know, she's a guest on one of the podcasts, and you know, we've been through so much as a married couple, but also when we've been married, but I've been away and she's been bringing up kids, and we've worked together on so many things. But that commitment that, you know, Liz is now the chief of staff of Unstoppable Force is a huge shift, because, you know, as Lizzie says, I'm here to support you, meaning me. And I look at that and say, yes, but that just doesn't mean making sure my shirts are ironed and there's food on the table. And is it there? You know, there's, in my view, there's so much more to supporting, and, you know, being there for recording days and being there for, you know, here, have a look at this email, read this, yeah, and all of that shift that I think, as, I mean, yeah, we're a little bit behind you as far as the launch of the business is concerned, and as that grows, it will continue to grow. You know, we've got a rule in the business that the only person who welcomes me on stage is my chief of staff, and that means that we own the whole experience. You know, when we've got a room full of people, the experience belongs to us. It's not just someone turning up and going, "Hey, Stu, woo!" You know, it's almost like a two-people play that you're invited to be a part of, and all of that growth. And we are still figuring it out, but you'd have to ask Liz. But it's it's a fascinating next level growth for us as a couple, I think. And yeah, what about you and Dane?
Yeah, that's something that's so cool hearing. And congratulations on 27 years married. Yeah. You guys have just celebrated.
Yeah, 2 months of happiness.
It's so good. It's so good. And yeah, I mean, we're about to celebrate 5 years married this year and 8 years together as a couple. But it's so cool that, and I think that what I'm seeing is that there's a revival of teamship in relationships and in marriage. And one of the sub goals, it's not necessarily a business goal that I have, is to see more married couples. Like, I want to see the divorce rates going down. And I think approaches like this, where we're not necessarily specifically helping people in marriage, but just being an example of what it is to be united as a team and being okay with the changes that happen in relationship and in marriage as you're leading a company or as you're leading a vision, and being on the same page. And, you know, we went through our first massive change in our marriage, in our relationship, when we retired. Well, the business was able to retire Dane from his corporate job, and that meant that the financial responsibility was then on me. And so that as an energy, normally it's the role of the man, that for us evoked some massive conversations around how do we want to lead, and what's the foundation for this relationship that we want to cultivate. And that in itself set the context for, the following years that we're now in, that allow us to just have very honest conversations and make sure that we're both in harmony with ourselves, so that we can be in harmony with the relationship and with where we're going.
I love the way you just put that. Because sometimes we look at relationships, and we'll have all been through them, where you go through sticky moments, let's say, or sticky times in the relationship, and you got to be in harmony with yourself first, and just realizing that I have been triggered, rather than you triggered me. No. I have been triggered. I'm just going to go and take a little bit of time. And I did it just the other day. I'm going to go and take a little bit of time and just investigate why I felt the way I did when that thing happened. And having maturity, having the experience to be able to then come back into the relationship and say, I think this is what happened. Because then you grow, and the relationship grows. And the more that we can understand that as couples, then hopefully, we marry the right person in the first place, and then we see the divorce rate coming down. Who knew we were going to go here? I certainly didn't see this one coming. We always do this.
But it's interesting you say that, because 10 years ago, I was in a relationship that wasn't the right relationship, and I was engaged to marry him. And one of my mentors at the time, we were doing a training together and having a conversation, and he said, he was reading some stats, and he said 80% of your success is determined by the person that you choose to marry. And in that moment, I knew, okay, I want a life of success, and I know that I need to get out of this relationship ASAP. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I think it's important.
And so I'm going to shift it. I'm going to take it back a little bit, because the title is Unstoppable Force. And I saw a photograph of you. It can only been a few weeks ago that you posted on social media a photograph of you from, I don't know, a few years ago. And you were unrecognizable. I had to look at it twice to realize that it was actually you. Because if you're watching this and you see Libby on screen, the photograph was a little bit different. Why was it so different?
Was it the photo with a neck brace on?
No, it was a puffy face that was red and blotchy, and that one.
Yeah, well, there we go. So 8 years ago, that would have been around about, and I probably had blonde hair, and I would have been puffy and chubby and not the epitome of health whatsoever. And that was a reflection of my lifestyle. I was drinking a lot. I was taking a lot of drugs. I was looking to anything outside of me to fill this hole that I had in me, this emptiness that I had within me. And that was my life. I worked hard, and I had a successful career as far as that goes. But I was what they call a high-functioning alcoholic. And my goal in life was to have as much fun as possible. And at the time, that looked like getting as wasted as possible and drinking to blackout every opportunity that I got.
All right. Well, there's a lot to just soak in there straight away. And then, so you mentioned the next photograph of being in a neck brace. As a result of?
As a result of, so that was it. That was that was the reality that I was living for years and years and years. And it was all I'd known. And then all of a sudden one day, after years of trying to give up drinking, I found myself in hospital. And I remember this moment. I was sobering up, and I had this neck brace on, and this nurse is shining a torch in my eyes, and I'm trying to work out what's going on. There's noises around me, right? Okay, I'm in the hospital. What's going on? And the nurses and the hospital staff, they tell me, you jumped out of a 2-story building last night and you are lucky to be alive. That was January the 30th, 2016. And in that moment, I remember it so clearly, this knowing washing over me. This is all I can describe it as. And my mum was in the hospital. She was sitting down there. I actually thought it was a nurse, and I put it in my book when I wrote my book that a nurse had asked me this question. My mum's reading the book. She goes, "I asked you that." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't even remember." Yeah. Anyway, so my mom's sitting there, and she goes, "Libby, like, this is not normal behavior. It's not normal to throw yourself out of a 2-story building. It's not normal the way that you get so drunk." To give context of it, her and I had a lot of conversations over the years around my drinking, and she was super worried for me. So she sits there, and I thought it was a nurse, but it was actually her. She asks, "What are you going to do?" And so as I'm feeling this knowing wash over me, I say the words, and as the words are coming out of my mouth, Stu, it was so funny. I was trying to stop them. I was like, "No, come back. I can't say this." These words were, "I can never drink again." And so from that moment on, I haven't. I've now been sober. What are we now? April, just over 7 years. And in that time, it has been a devotion and a discipline to figuring out why on earth I'm on this planet, what on earth I'm meant to be doing, and how can I use my testimony as proof of what's available for us in this life.
And I sense that you, just watching you tell that story, you still feel it intensely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't think, and I know that you've had moments like this as well, just those life-changing moments where these realizations, they never leave us, right? It's like the moment in our life where we have a decision to make, and there's this crossroads available to us, and we can go down this route or we can go down this route. And the route that is easier, right? It would have been easier to just keep drinking. I didn't know anyone at that stage in my life who didn't drink. I didn't know anyone that lived a life of sobriety. I didn't know what that would look like. And so by choosing the path that was in front of me, that I had no idea how to do it, but I just knew that it was the right path that I had to choose, has resulted in a life that is unrecognizable. I couldn't have even imagined the level of, I call it success, but I feel like we're just getting started. You know, I could never even imagined life like it is right now, but that is a result of the discipline and the devotion of choosing the path that I didn't know what was happening tomorrow. I didn't know what was happening next week. I didn't even know what was happening next year. It was just one day at a time, walking with faith. And that, when we choose our most aligned path, is going to be harder to start with, but it's also going to be the one that we receive the most blessings and miracles.
And that's, that really is, you made, as far as society was concerned, you made an unreasonable decision. You made an unreasonable choice. And unfortunately, I think that when we use, and in fact, I know that when we use the word unreasonable, we think about it in negative terms.
Oh,
when I ask people, when were you last unreasonable? They go, you probably need to ask my wife. Or, it was probably them with the kids. Rather than, well, if we use unreasonable as a growth statement, which you did, then that walk, it really is a walk with faith when you've got to make that unreasonable call. But you must have been making unreasonable decisions ever since, unreasonable choices ever since that moment.
I mean, you know this as well. It's like it's once you know what it looks like and feels like to make decisions based on your deepest truth, you can't keep lying to yourself. And if you're making decisions from your ego or from that, this looks easy, let me choose this, it catches up on you and you can't run from it any longer. So I think the only way is to make unreasonable decisions, right? So like quitting corporate, moving to Bali, starting a business, continuing to change the business, moving things as soon as they're not in alignment, having hard conversations, saying things that you don't want to say, but you know that they need to be said in a relationship or with someone that you care about. And yeah, I think now it's the only way to live, right?
And it's so much more exciting, isn't it? So I'm going to put you on the spot here. But yeah, you mentioned living in your own truth. First steps, for people who listen to this going, I'd love to live in my own truth, but I just don't know how to do it. I talk about, right, when were you last unreasonable? When did you give the ultimate sacrifice the last time? When did you give your time and your energy to something you really didn't want to do? And those are the steps that I talk about for finding a truth. How would you guide someone through it?
Yeah, I love that. And so first of all, as we're having this conversation, so obviously anyone listening, you're ready to live your purpose. You're ready to step into an unreasonable, unstoppable life. And one of the first steps that I guide people to do if you're going through this, and one of the first steps that I did myself was get radically, unreasonably honest with yourself and do an inventory of your life. So what I mean by this with an inventory is look around at your life and look at what is it that you have actually chosen. Like if we're not satisfied in life, or if there's anything that you're unhappy with, there's a reason why you're experiencing that. And part of you is tough as that is to hear and a tough pill to swallow sometimes. You've decided in some way that you're okay with whatever it is that you're experiencing. And so by doing an inventory and looking at, right, what are all the things in my life that I'm not satisfied with, that I'm not happy with, that I'm not fulfilled with, that I have actually allowed or continue to allow to be in my life. And then what's required to change that. And ultimately, we all know the answers deep down. It's just a matter of stopping and getting really honest with ourselves and stop bullshitting ourselves with the lies that we've been tolerating, and go, what am I no longer available for? What changes do I have to make? Either a change in my mindset, either a change in my perspective, or in my habits and in my behavior, and what's then required to get to where I want to be. And often it's not even where do I want to be, because often when we're making these changes, it's like, I just know where I don't want to be.
Yeah. And I think, I completely agree with the whole taking the inventory of life. I think I would add that, we need to be bold and we've got to be brave, courageous when we're doing this. But we've also got to remember to be kind to ourselves. If we're looking at, in my case, if I'm looking at changing to a new path, then I've got 50 years of baggage, and that's just mine. Never mind my family's, my culture, my country. So we've got to start on that path, but be kind in the process.
Yeah, 100%. And just on that as well, because once we've following on from that, one of the steps that is super important when we're being kind to ourselves and super compassionate is this process that I call just making peace with the past. And that means realizing and accepting that we did the best that we could with what we had at the time that we did it. And so many of us, we walk around with so much shame and guilt around our existence. And, even just the fact, if we look at religion, the fact of being born, it's like you're born a sinner. And so already we're born into this energy collectively that I'm not enough or I'm not good enough. And one of the most rebellious things that I think that we can do to create an unstoppable life and being unreasonable is to decide and realize that as I am enough. And everything that I've done in the past, I'm going to accept that. I'm going to own it, but I'm also going to forgive myself. I'm going to love myself through that. And I'm going to hold myself in so much compassion. Because when I do that, then I can hold others in forgiveness and compassion and see the imperfection and love them through that as well.
Beautiful. And remembering that we got to this point, this choice point, because of everything we've been through. there's one of the moments we can actually look back and go, yeah, I can forgive that, because actually there's nothing to forgive. It's a choice that I'm making to grow in the future. Libby, this has been, as ever, an absolutely phenomenal conversation. I've loved it. It went places that I didn't actually think it would. I couldn't have imagined it would have gone to some of those places. But unfortunately for this one, it's time to wrap it up. So one final question for you. If you were a superhero, which one would you be? And you can't have Wonder Woman, because you already are.
Well, in that case, I would be Superman.
Okay. For why?
But why? So, growing up, Superman was the epitome. This is before, I guess, gender roles and this sort of thing. I just thought Superman's cool. And superheroes have always given me a permission to dream. And being someone who others can rely on, who goes out there and does cool shit, I just think that's awesome. So if there were no if I remove genders, I don't know any other female.
You could have had She-Hulk. You could have had She-Hulk, but never mind, Libby. but you're not that angry, Libby. Thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to talking sometime soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. Ciao, everyone. Bye.
Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, but more importantly, I hope you got something from it. As I say to clients at our workshops, if you take one phrase from one sentence that was uttered during that podcast, then this has been of value. If you're looking for more content, jump across to www.unstoppableforce.co.nz or find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. If you enjoyed this and you want more, we are live across New Zealand at events and workshops and sometimes in the US. If this has been valuable to become an unstoppable force, come along and reach beyond your limits.